The world is white and screaming. Wind lashes through the trees, tearing branches like brittle bones. Jack Mercer leans into the gale, scarf frozen against his mouth, flashlight flickering weakly in his gloved hand. The beam cuts through sheets of snow, catching glimpses of claw tracks already vanishing. He yells a name, swallowed instantly by the storm, "Kodiak!" His voice sounds foreign, shredded by panic and cold. Somewhere in the chaos, something answers, a deep, distant growl or memory. He can't tell. The sound stirs something ancient in him, a soldier's instinct buried beneath years of silence. His boots sink knee-deep with every step. Around him, the mountains groan beneath the weight of the storm like an animal waking. He isn't searching for survival now. He's chasing something bigger, something sacred. The only thought repeating in his mind, he watched my cabin every day, and now he's gone. Hours earlier, autumn sunlight, brittle and thin. The same mountain now breathes quiet, deceptive peace. Jack splits logs with mechanical precision. The rhythm of the axe is his only conversation. Each strike echoes off the pines and fades into stillness. He likes it that way, controlled, predictable, a soldier's heartbeat measured against nature's silence. But today, the silence answers back. From the ridge above his clearing, a shape materializes. Massive, motionless, unmistakable. A bear, dark as thunderclouds, stands at the tree line, facing him. Jack freezes, axe mid-air. The animal doesn't move. Its gaze is steady, deliberate, unafraid. For a long minute, neither blinks. Then the bear turns away, vanishing between trees as soundlessly as mist. Jack exhales, unaware he'd stopped breathing. He stares at the ridge, heart thundering. The forest has eyes again. He doesn't know it yet, but the ritual has begun, and it will not end until something inside him breaks. Night folds over the cabin like a heavy tarp. Jack sits by the stove, watching firelight shimmer on the window. Beyond the glass, the forest is a black wall, and somewhere in that darkness he feels it, the bear's steady presence. It's not fear that grips him, it's a recognition. The stillness outside feels too disciplined, too intentional. He remembers men who stood guard that way, motionless, eyes scanning horizons that never stopped burning. The fire pops, and for an instant the crackle sounds like gunfire. He flinches, fists clenching around nothing. The ghost of the desert war presses against him, hot sand and blood in the cold of Appalachia. He stands abruptly, breathing sharp through his nose. "You're not real," he mutters, though the words carry no conviction. Then outside, one low growl, almost a sigh. The woods listen. The silence after feels like someone closing a door behind him. The next evening, 5:43 p.m., exactly the same time. The sun bleeds orange behind the ridges, long shadows slicing across the yard. Jack grips the axe handle tighter, pretending to work, though every swing is an act of waiting. Then it happens again. Movement on the ridge. The same hulking figure steps from the pines, fur silvered by dying light. Kodiak. The bear stands at the edge of clearing. Same stance, same distance, like a ritual repeated with sacred precision. Jack's breath fogs the air. He doesn't move. Neither does the bear. The moment stretches, electric, as though the mountain itself holds its breath between them. Finally, the bear lowers its head slightly, not submission, but acknowledgement, and retreats into the forest. Jack stares after him, pulse thrumming. Two soldiers, two watchers, each guarding something unseen. He doesn't yet understand that the silence between them has already chosen him. Days slide into each other, marked only by the bear's arrival. Always the same hour, always the same ritual. Jack starts timing it without realizing. 5:43 p.m., dusklight, the Sentinel returns. He records it in his logbook, beside notes on weather and firewood. But beneath the routine, unease coils tighter each day. He dreams of battle again, radio static, white sand, the sound of rotors replaced by the mountain wind. He wakes gasping, certain he's heard Kodiak breathing outside his window. He steps onto the porch, barefoot, breath steaming in the chill. The ridge glows under a sliver of moonlight. There, motionless shadow, eyes glinting, watching, always watching. He whispers, "What do you want from me?" The answer comes not in sound, but in a sensation, a gravity pulling from the trees. He feels it deep in his bones. The mountain isn't empty anymore. It's remembering. Jack Mercer rises before dawn, the cold already in his bones. The cabin creaks as wind whispers across the tin roof. He chops wood until his hands blister, walks the perimeter, checks snares that catch nothing but frost. The mountain gives no company, except the waiting. Each afternoon, as the light thins, he feels the familiar pressure build, the sense of eyes across distance. At 5:43, the pattern holds. Kodiak returns, exact position, exact silence. Jack times it to the second, not out of curiosity, but compulsion, because if the world moves by a rule, he can survive it. Yet something in that silence feels less like routine and more like communion. The bear isn't begging or threatening, it's witnessing. And though Jack doesn't say it aloud, part of him craves that acknowledgement, the wordless salute between two sentries guarding invisible ghosts.
Rain turns the earth to a wet sheen. Jack trudges along the fence line, eyes scanning for fallen branches, animal sign, any anomaly to fill the quiet. That's when he sees it, deep gouges etched into the bark of a pine. 4 straight, 1 diagonal. Not random. The cuts are deliberate, almost measured. He traces them with a gloved hand. The grooves are fresh. The same pattern appears on another trunk 20 yards away, identical spacing, identical direction. He sketches them later by lamplight, labeling them with the date and hour. The page looks like field intelligence, not journal entries. "You marking territory or sending orders?" he mutters. A drop of sap runs down the paper like blood. Outside, thunder rolls through the valley, long, low, and tired. He closes his notebook slowly, the realization heavy. This isn't wilderness chaos. This is something ritual. Someone or something is keeping score. The next morning dawns gray and heavy. Jack's patrol takes him farther than usual, deeper into the woods. He moves like a ghost himself, boots whispering through moss and needles. There, half hidden beneath vines, stands a small shack, old, leaning, its roof caved but walls stubbornly upright. Inside, the air smells of wood smoke and forgotten years. Dust motes hang like frozen breath. On a narrow shelf rests a cracked picture frame, glass long gone. In the photo, a young woman in flannel, smile wide, feeding a bear cub from a tin bowl. The cub's fur, silvered gray, familiar. His throat tightens. On the back of the photograph, a name scrawled in faded ink, Maggie Hanlon. Jack tucks it into his coat pocket carefully, as though the air itself might tear it. When he steps back into the forest light, the silence feels charged, as if the trees have seen him steal a secret.
That evening, the storm holds off, but the air hums with static. Jack sits on his porch, the photograph resting beside his coffee mug. He doesn't know who Maggie Hanlon was, but the name feels tethered to something old and unfinished. Across the yard, the pines ripple, branches shifting against the dying light. And there he is, Kodiak. The bear steps from the shadows, pausing at the ridge as always, though tonight his gaze drops briefly to Jack's hand, to the glint of the photo frame catching light. For one surreal heartbeat, it feels like recognition. Jack's chest tightens. He lifts the picture slightly, half in offering, half in challenge. The bear doesn't move closer, but its head tilts, almost human, before it turns away. The trees swallow him whole again. Jack stands there long after,
the fading warmth of the cup in his palm, and a name echoing through the wind. The next night brings cold rain instead of snow. Jack sits by the stove, the photograph propped beside his lamp, a small portal into someone else's peace. He studies the cub's features, the streak of silver along its muzzle, the pale scar above its right eye. Same as Kodiak. It's him. Maggie fed this creature once, years before the war ever took Jack's own humanity. Outside, thunder rumbles low, like something restless beneath the earth. Jack whispers into the firelight, "You're not lost, are you? You're remembering." His own voice sounds strange, reverent. He glances toward the window, half expecting the great shadow to be there, keeping watch. Instead, only his reflection stares back, haunted, hollow, waiting. He doesn't notice the faint shape moving beyond the glass, massive and still, until lightning flickers and outlines it perfectly. The watcher has returned. But now, it's closer than ever before.
Jack stops pretending not to wait. Each day, he finishes his work early, stacking logs in neat geometric piles, boots aligned like a soldier preparing for inspection. By dusk, he's already on the porch. At precisely 5:43, Kodiak appears, a gray monument against the orange skyline. The bear never approaches, never flees. It simply is, constant and patient, as though keeping time with something older than the clock on Jack's wall. Tonight, the silence feels heavier, purposeful. The forest isn't watching, it's listening. Jack feels it in the marrow of his bones, the rhythm of the mountains sinking to his own heartbeat. He whispers, "You never miss your post, do you?" The bear's breath fogs the cold air once, a visible exhale that seems like an answer. For the first time in years, Jack feels seen, not by man, but by the wilderness itself. Morning brings frost so sharp it glitters like broken glass. Jack follows the faint prints Kodiak leaves behind, careful not to disturb them. They stop at the same ridge every time, no closer. A line drawn between them, distance enforced not by fear, but by respect. He kneels, measuring the span of each paw mark, noting the depth, the weight. This isn't randomness. The bear stands watch exactly where it can see his cabin door, the only human point of entry. It feels like an assignment. Jack's soldier's mind begins to map the field, where Kodiak watches, where he patrols, the wind direction each evening. He pins it all on a map tacked to the cabin wall, lines crossing like battle plans. When he's done, the layout looks familiar, too familiar. The bear's pattern mirrors a military perimeter, a sentry's arc of defense. Jack wakes from a dream of sirens and sand. He's back in the desert, smoke in the air, heat blistering his face. Then, amid the chaos, a low rumble, not of tanks, but thunder. He opens his eyes. Morning fog fills the cabin window, and for an instant, he sees his reflection overlap with Kodiak's. Two faces, one man, one beast, both bearing scars that never healed. He steps outside, barefoot, ground cold, breath visible. At the ridge, the bear is already there. Jack stops halfway, unsure who approached first. Their eyes meet across the clearing. No threat, no submission, just mirrored understanding. "You see it too, don't you?" Jack mutters. The bear lowers its head slightly, an acknowledgement or a memory, then turns back toward the forest. The sound of its departure is identical to the wind leaving a tent flap open on a battlefield. Later that afternoon, thunder rolls through the mountains. Not storm thunder, but the hollow boom of something shifting deep underground. The vibration rattles the windows. Jack steps out, scanning the horizon.
Kodiak stands farther away than usual, looking not at the cabin, but past it, toward the west ridge. The bear's posture is alert, tense. Jack feels a pulse of unease. He remembers the claw marks on the trees, like warnings carved in code. That night he can't sleep. The tremor repeats once, faintly, like a heartbeat in the soil. He dreams of the ground splitting open, a roar rising from beneath. When he wakes, the cabin is still, the air thick with that same charged quiet. He opens the door and sees a new set of marks gouged into his fence overnight. They form a shape now, a rough curve, like half a circle closing in.
Determined, Jack returns to the old shack where he found the photograph. The path feels narrower, overgrown, as though the mountain is reluctant to share its secret again. Inside, the air is colder. He sweeps his flashlight across walls now wet from condensation. On a nail above the cot hangs a rusted metal chain, its end empty, broken. Beside it, faint impressions in the dust where something heavy once rested. He crouches, fingertips brushing over them. It feels like reverence. A soft sound startles him, a breath, not wind. Outside, Kodiak stands just beyond the doorway, silent, unmoving, framed by mist and rotting timber. For the first time, Jack feels no fear. He steps aside, granting the bear passage. Kodiak does not enter. He simply looks inside, then back at Jack, as if to confirm something sacred has been remembered. Then he vanishes into the trees again. The following morning, sunlight returns brittle and pale. Jack hikes toward the west ridge, the place Kodiak had been watching. The climb is steep, air thin. Near the summit he finds what the bear had guarded, a shallow depression in the ground, barely visible under moss and snowmelt. He brushes debris aside and freezes. The soil beneath has been disturbed, not recently, but long ago. A small wooden cross lies toppled, its surface nearly consumed by rot. No inscription, no name, just the remains of something once meant to mark remembrance. Jack kneels, pressing his hand to the cold earth. The ground feels oddly warm beneath. He hears the faintest sound, low, rhythmic breathing, but it's only the wind through the pines. Or maybe not. For a moment he swears he feels a heartbeat under his palm. He whispers, "Who are you guarding, old boy?" The mountain answers only with silence. Evening, again. Jack sharpens his knife by the window when a glint catches his eye, something embedded in the snow near the fence. He steps outside, crunch of ice loud in the stillness. Kneeling, he digs with bare hands until the object comes free. Metal, worn and dulled by time. A soldier's dog tag. He wipes it clean. W. Hanlon. The name jolts him upright. He's seen it before, on a supply invoice from the nearest town, months ago. Walter Hanlon. He turns the tag over. A shallow dent distorts the lettering, as if crushed under great weight. In the distance, a sound. A low groan, half animal, half grief. He spins, scanning the tree line, but sees nothing. The dog tag glints once in his palm before he closes his fist around it. So that's it. You're standing guard for him. But deep down, he knows it's not that simple. The discovery won't leave him. Jack drives down the mountain to the nearest general store, a place of wood smoke and gossip. When he asks about Walter Hanlon, the cashier's face softens with recognition. "Old man's been up there near the North Trail forever," she says. "Lives alone now. Wife passed years ago. Maggie, I think. Sweet lady." Jack's chest tightens at the name. The cashier continues. "He doesn't come down much. Folks say he talks to someone who ain't there." Jack thanks her, pockets the tag, and steps back into the brittle daylight. The world suddenly feels smaller, everything connected by invisible threads. He looks toward the ridge, where the mountains loom blue-gray and endless.
Somewhere out there, Kodiak is still keeping watch. Maybe not for Walter, but for Maggie. The bear isn't a ghost. It's a memory made flesh. A vow the mountain refuses to break.
By twilight, the sky turns the color of steel. Jack hikes toward the ridge again, the dog tag heavy in his pocket. Fresh snow muffles his steps, but it stops short. Dark patches stain the white ahead. Blood. Not much, but enough to send dread crawling up his spine. He follows the trail uphill, each crimson splash smaller than the last. The tracks beside them are Kodiak's, massive, deliberate, but dragging on one side. The bear is hurt. The trail leads to the very clearing where Maggie once fed the cub. There, the snow is churned, branches broken, and silence thick as grief. Jack kneels, fingers grazing a tuft of gray fur, still warm. "You saved a man once," he whispers. "Don't make me lose you too." The forest answers only with wind, an old, tired sigh that sounds disturbingly like the breath of something dying. Night falls hard. Jack lights a lantern and places it on the porch, its flame trembling against the wind. It's an old military habit, an unspoken code. Light means safety, means return. He leaves the dog tag beside it, glinting like an offering. Hours pass. The storm brews distant on the horizon, thunder murmuring over the peaks. Jack dozes in his chair until a faint sound wakes him, a low rumble, not from the sky, but the tree line. He steps out, lantern trembling in his grip. There, beyond the clearing, two amber eyes glow faintly. Kodiak, limping but standing. The bear stares at the light for a long, solemn moment, then disappears into the dark once more. The wind shifts. Far off, another sound rides it, the crack of splitting ice, the whisper of something vast approaching. The mountain is holding its breath. The storm is finally coming.
The mountain holds its breath. The days shorten, light thinning like old paper. Jack Mercer no longer counts time by clocks, but by appearances, the steady return of the bear each dusk. Kodiak's vigil becomes the only pulse that keeps the silence alive. The man and the creature inhabit parallel routines, bound by distance and repetition. Somewhere between them, an unspoken covenant grows. But beneath that pattern, the air thickens. The forest feels restless, birds migrating early, wind carrying a taste of metal. Jack senses a shift, the way soldiers sense an ambush before it forms. The mountain is preparing for something vast and merciless. Each evening, as Kodiak holds his post, a tremor travels the ground beneath them both, faint, rhythmic, like a buried heartbeat. The season of waiting is ending. The wilderness has begun to turn against its own calm. Snow dusts the valley long before winter should have arrived. Jack marks it on the calendar out of habit, though the pages have lost their meaning. He works slower now, as if time itself is dragging him towards something he can't avoid. The forest grows unnaturally still. No birds, no rustle of small lives in the brush. Only the sighing wind moving between trunks like a ghost rehearsing memory. Each night, the horizon dims earlier, light devoured by gray. Kodiak remains faithful, his massive shape fixed at the ridge even as weather gnaws at his fur. The connection between man and beast no longer feels voluntary. It feels inevitable, as though the mountain itself had written them into the same sentence. The silence deepens, not peaceful, but suffocating, until every breath Jack takes sounds too loud, too human, too alone.
The storm begins as a vibration. It hums through the nails in the cabin walls, travels down the wooden beams, and enters Jack's bones. The temperature drops sharply. the world tightening like a muscle before it breaks. Kodiak appears one last time before the descent, standing against the bruised horizon. The sky behind him looks torn, streaked with black seams of incoming snow. Jack watches from the porch, arms folded, breath thick as smoke. The bear's stillness is absolute, unnatural, an anchor against the chaos forming above. Then, without warning, the first flakes fall, slow, deliberate, heavy. They land on the bear's back and do not melt. The forest exhales. The air changes texture. Jack senses a threshold being crossed, an invisible boundary between endurance and surrender. The ritual that once felt eternal begins to crumble under the weight of a coming storm. By morning, the mountain disappears beneath a wall of white. The world shrinks to the few yards beyond Jack's porch. Visibility collapses, distance erased by an endless blur. He waits for the familiar silhouette to form at the ridge, but the snow is relentless, concealing everything. Hours pass, each indistinguishable from the next. The bear does not come. The emptiness gnaws at him with a precision sharper than hunger. Every sound carries weight. The groan of timbers, the hiss of wind through the eaves, the faint drip of thawing frost. The silence that once kept him safe now feels predatory, circling closer with each passing hour. By nightfall, the lantern's glow becomes his only horizon, a fragile heartbeat against the white void. The mountain has reclaimed its solitude, and with it, the fragile piece that kept Jack alive begins to splinter.
The storm buries everything. Snow against the windows, snow across the roof, snow rising against the door like rising water. Jack moves through the cabin by instinct alone. The fire burns low, light fading with the same rhythm as his resolve. In the distance, the wind shifts pitch, forming strange, hollow tones that sound almost human. The structure creaks as though under siege. Memories bleed through, the thump of helicopter rotors, the crack of distant gunfire, the acrid taste of sand and smoke. The storm outside merges with the one inside his mind until both become indistinguishable. The bear's absence gnaws at the edges of his reason. Every gust feels like breath from something colossal waiting just beyond the walls. The silence between gusts is worse. It listens. It learns his breathing. The fortress he built for solitude becomes a cage echoing his own unraveling. At dusk, instinct overrides logic. The cabin's safety feels suffocating, its warmth unbearable. Jack shoulders his pack, lights his heavy torch, and opens the door to the screaming world outside. Snow lashes against him, erasing his tracks as he makes them. Each step forward demands an act of will. Visibility collapses into a tunnel of gray. The beam of light catches glimpses of bark, broken branches, and the occasional frozen tuft of fur. He moves as if guided by memory, by the unseen pulse that once synchronized his breath with Kodiak's. The storm feels alive, a creature made of wind and ice, testing his endurance. His heartbeat becomes its own compass, steady, deliberate, defiant. Somewhere in the distance, a low roar rises, deep and resonant, not thunder, but something older. The mountain speaks through the storm, and Jack answers by pressing deeper into its white mouth. The blizzard erases direction. There is no up or down, only resistance. Jack moves through the chaos in fragments, body and mind drifting apart.
The light from his torch flickers, swallowed by snow. Sound becomes shape. Movement becomes rhythm. Then, faint and rhythmic, beneath the howling storm, something new emerges. A pulse, like footsteps spaced by distance and time. He stops, holding breath. The pulse repeats, closer now, syncopated with the storm's howl. The sensation of being observed returns, not imagined, but absolute. He angles his beam forward and catches it for a heartbeat. A trail pressed into snow, deep, deliberate, staggered. The prints are Kodiak's, partially erased but unmistakable. The bear is alive, moving through the storm's center. The signal cuts through the white noise like memory breaking through trauma. The mission forms instantly in Jack's mind. Survival becomes pursuit. The hunt turns sacred. He follows the tracks until his legs burn. Each print serves as both direction and reassurance that something larger than him still exists. The storm claws at his face, ice embedding in his beard. He no longer feels cold, only purpose. The prints weave between trees, vanish, then reappear. Once, he thinks he's lost them, only to find a paw mark on a fallen log pressed like a deliberate signpost. The terrain dips, wind shrieking through narrow hollows. The bear is leading him somewhere, not fleeing. Snow blinds him, but he senses a gravity in the pattern, a pull guiding him forward. The landscape changes texture, softer, deeper, then suddenly level. Ahead, through swirling white, a shadow forms. A structure, small, angular, buried to its windows in snow. The tracks end there. The mission becomes clear. The bear has not disappeared. It has returned to where everything began.
The shape solidifies as he nears it, an old hunting shack, walls bowed beneath the snow's crushing weight. The door is sealed shut, frozen solid. Jack clears the drift with gloved hands, every motion mechanical. The storm shrieks louder, wind scraping against the wood like claws. His flashlight beam slices the darkness through a crack between planks. Inside, faint shadows move. He braces, then forces the latch. The door gives suddenly, snow spilling inside like a flood. The interior air is lifeless, dry, untouched for weeks. On the floor lies a collapsed chair, an overturned lantern, and the unmistakable shape of a man curled near the stove. Beside him, a mound of fur, massive and still. The storm's roar fades behind him as if crossing a threshold. He steps inside, the door closing with a sound like the final note of a prayer. The world outside ceases to exist. The shack is a tomb of silence. The air carries the brittle scent of extinguished fire and old ash. Jack's light falls across the bodies, the old man's face pale and rigid, the bear's fur glazed with frost. Yet even in death-like stillness, something feels alive. The two forms touch, the bear's massive body curved protectively around the man's fragile frame. A faint warmth lingers in the space between them, fragile as breath. Jack kneels beside them, his pulse slowing until it matches that rhythm. The storm outside fades to a distant murmur. Time dissolves. For the first time, he understands what the bear was guarding. Not territory, not instinct, but memory itself. The silence is no longer empty. It is full of devotion, so profound it refuses to die. In that moment, the line between man, beast, and ghost vanishes completely.
Heat rises faintly from the old stove's rusted shell. Jack kneels beside the fallen bodies, studying details with soldier's precision. Frost coats the man's eyelashes. The bear's flank trembles once, barely visible.
The pulse of life hides beneath the ruin. Jack moves automatically, his training surfacing through exhaustion. Fire must come first. He gathers splintered wood from broken shelves, stacking it inside the stove with deliberate calm. Sparks leap, tentative, then cling to kindling. Orange light creeps across the cabin's walls, revealing decades of soot and forgotten photographs. The bear's fur glows copper, breathing shallow but steady. The man's skin, waxen moments before, reflects the first hint of color. Outside, the storm howls against the walls, searching for entry, denied by thin timber and stubborn will. Inside, the faint crackle of fire becomes the heartbeat of survival. Two lives teeter on its fragile warmth. The light deepens, painting the cabin interior in tones of ember and shadow. Jack moves between stove and floor, feeding the flame, checking pulse, wrapping the old man in coarse blankets scavenged from a cot. Every movement feels rehearsed, a memory of other rescues long ago, when comrades bled beneath desert suns instead of snow. The bear's eyes open briefly, molten gold flickering through frost. There is no aggression, only recognition, the acknowledgement of shared purpose. The animal exhales, steam ghosting upward into the smoke. Jack feels the rhythm synchronize, his heartbeat, the bear's breath, the slow return of human pulse beneath his hand. The cabin becomes a single living organism, man, beast, and fading soldier bound by necessity. Outside, the blizzard pounds in frustration, its voice a constant drumbeat, reminding them all how thin the wall is between life and erasure.
As the temperature steadies, details emerge from darkness. Along one wall, a crooked shelf holds fragments of another life. A tin cup, a sewing needle, a folded quilt that smells faintly of pine. Above the stove, pinned by a nail, hangs a yellowed photograph identical to the one Jack carries in his coat. The same woman, the same cub, the same gentle tilt of her head. Beneath the photo rests a wooden box, lid cracked by time. Inside lie mementos, a comb, a pressed flower, a service medal dulled by decades of touch. Every object hums with quiet devotion. The air thickens with the weight of continuity. Jack realizes he has stepped not into a shelter, but into a monument built by memory itself. The bear's presence, the man's isolation, the worn relics, all pieces of a single vow that neither age nor winter managed to erase. The firelight flickers over the man's features, tracing lines etched by years of endurance. A name surfaces in Jack's mind from the tag he carries, Walter Hanlon. The syllables fit the face. The old soldier breathes shallowly, chest rising with the rhythm of fragile persistence. The connection crystallizes. Walter and Maggie Hanlon, the woman from the photograph, the mountain dwellers who once called this wilderness home. The bear that now guards them was not tamed, it was loved, and in that love learned vigilance. Jack studies the cracked walls and senses unseen layers. The whispers of conversations once held here, the scent of bread once baked in quieter seasons. He feels time folding around him, the present dissolving into echoes. The storm outside rages, but within these boundaries, an older calm survives, held by loyalty so complete it defies decay.
Hours bleed together. The fire consumes its fuel with patient hunger, radiating a pulse that steadies the room. Jack drifts between consciousness and trance, eyes fixed on the slow rise and fall of Kodiak's ribcage. The bear has repositioned itself closer to the stove, body shielding the frail human shape it protects. Its wounds glisten faintly where light catches thawing ice. Every exhale releases mist into the cabin, a steady veil dissolving upward. The old man's breathing answers, shallow but persistent. Between them stretches a silence thicker than sound,
the quiet of duty performed beyond reason. Outside, snow accumulates against the walls, burying the lower window until the world disappears completely. The isolation becomes absolute. Yet, within that isolation grows something luminous, a fragile sanctuary carved from instinct, endurance, and faith that warmth, once shared, can outlast even the longest storm. Time loses its edges. The cabin interior glows dimly, suspended between dream and survival. Jack adds wood in intervals measured by heartbeat rather than hour. The storm's roar blurs into the background, transforming into a steady drone like ocean surf herds through walls. Sleep claims him in fragments, bringing visions that bleed into reality, faces from combat, eyes wide with dust and disbelief. Through each image moves a shadow, vast and silent, carrying weight but leaving no wound. The shape resembles Kodiak, yet older, elemental, a memory of endurance itself. Each vision dissolves into the next until sound and sight merge into pure sensation. When his eyes open again, the fire still burns. The man and the bear remain alive. The mountain outside screams, but inside its heart, three rhythms continue to beat in defiance of oblivion.
Just before dawn, the wind shifts. Its pitch rises from guttural to shrill, a sound like steel dragged across stone. The blizzard reaches its climax, hammering the cabin with sheets of snow. The roof bows under weight, beams groan in protest. Jack braces the door with a chair, pressing his shoulder against it as if holding back the ocean. The air inside thickens with smoke and heat. The bear lifts its head, ears twitching toward the fury outside. Its eyes catch the firelight, twin suns burning within the tempest. The old man stirs, drawing a ragged breath that seems to answer the storm's challenge. For a fleeting instant, the world exists only as opposing forces, wind and warmth, death and devotion, chaos and stillness. Then the roar diminishes, breaking into softer gusts, and the first pale hint of morning filters through snow-packed glass. When the light strengthens, the storm's aftermath reveals its true face. The cabin is half buried, windows veiled by frost so thick it turns sunrise into amber haze. Jack moves stiffly, exhaustion etched into every motion. The old man's color has returned. The pulse beneath his wrist beats steady but faint. The bear remains near, eyes half closed, breath slow and rhythmic. The photograph above the stove shimmers in the new light, its image alive again. Jack sees the continuity, the same devotion linking woman, man, and beast. What once seemed coincidence becomes inheritance. The bear's daily vigil at the ridge was not instinct, it was remembrance, an unbroken chain of loyalty spanning years. The realization settles over him like warmth after fever. Outside, the storm's debris gleams with small prisms of ice, 1,000 fragments reflecting the single truth of enduring love.
Mid-morning arrives quietly. The blizzard's rage dissolves into dripping eaves and the muted creak of thaw. Jack opens the door a fraction, releasing a ribbon of warm air into the pale world. The mountains emerge, reshaped and purified by snow. A clean silence reigns, the kind that follows confession. Behind him, the bear stirs, rising slowly to its feet. Each motion deliberate, monumental. It stands beside the old man's cot, muzzle brushing the blanket once, then turns toward the doorway. The gesture is neither farewell nor surrender, it is continuation. Jack watches, understanding instinctively that this creature has completed its task. Kodiak steps into the melting daylight,
Its figure becomes silhouette, dissolving against the brilliance. The sound of its passage fades into wind whispering through newly freed branches. The guardian returns to the mountain, leaving gratitude in its wake. Inside the cabin, warmth lingers long after the bear's departure. The fire burns low but steady, filling the air with the scent of pine resin and survival. Jack stands by the window, watching flakes drift lazily through sunbeams. The old soldier rests peacefully, face turned toward the light. The storm has taken nothing that mattered. Instead, it has revealed what endured beneath all storms. The cabin's silence now carries weight, not emptiness. Every creak, every ember pop, every whisper of settling snow speaks of witness and renewal. Far off through open sky, the faint echo of a roar rolls across the valley, soft, resonant, eternal. It fades into the distance, merging with the breath of the wind. In that sound lives the mountain's heartbeat, and within that heartbeat, the memory of 3 lives that met in one night to remember what loyalty truly means.
The mountain exhales. Sunlight seeps through frost-rimmed glass, touching the rough floorboards with thin gold. Jack opens the door fully for the first time in days. Outside, the snowfield blazes white, a blinding ocean frozen in mid-motion. Air rushes inward, crisp and sharp, scattering the lingering smoke. The world smells clean again, sap, iron, and distant pine. Behind him, the old soldier breathes steadily beneath a heap of blankets, skin no longer waxen. Jack steps into the glare, blinking at the sudden vastness. The blizzard's weight has lifted, leaving behind a silence so complete it rings. Across that hush, he imagines faint movement far down slope, a heavy shape threading between trees. He doesn't call out. The mountain itself seems to hold the pause, honoring the fragile continuity of all things that endured the storm and still choose to live. Hours blend into gentle rhythm. Jack hauls snow from the doorway, stacking it into glittering walls of meltwater ice. Each shovel stroke anchors him back inside his body, muscles reacquainted with purpose. The cabin emerges gradually from burial. It seems breathing again. Inside, the stove hums low, releasing the scent of charred cedar and thaw. The old man stirs at intervals, a faint whisper of life turning within fragile lungs. Outside, the forest drips. Icicles crack in slow surrender. What was chaos becomes reconstruction, method replacing panic, calm built one motion at a time. In the quiet rhythm of work, Jack senses unseen observation, the feeling of the bear's gaze still woven through air. The watcher may have gone, yet its presence remains inscribed in every sound of thawing water. Renewal begins not with warmth, but with labor that refuses collapse. Days lengthen. Jack tends the recovering soldier through habit, learned from command and loss. The tasks are small: boiling snow for water, drying firewood, securing the roof, but within them grows something larger. Each act of care rebuilds a bridge between isolation and belonging. In the intervals of rest, he feels the mountain watching through the window's pale square. The silence has changed character. It no longer suffocates, it instructs. The absence of the bear teaches steadiness, patience, endurance stripped of fear. The creature's discipline has imprinted itself on him like a forgotten creed. When the wind rises at dusk, it carries that low resonance, part growl, part memory. Jack listens without resistance. He no longer seeks meaning. He accepts instruction delivered in wordless language, the kind only wilderness and old guardians know. The old man's recovery unfolds like spring beneath snow. Color returns first, a flush under translucent skin, then motion, fingers twitching in response to warmth. Jack marks each small sign as victory, each breath a step reclaimed from oblivion. The mountain outside mirrors the awakening. Runoff channels carve narrow veins through ice. Birds test the sky with hesitant cries. Trunks release stored sap. Life resumes in increments. Within the cabin, the rhythm of breathing and melting align. Two quiet resurrections occurring side by side. The storm's memory lingers only in walls stained by smoke. The light has grown steadier, less fragile. Morning after morning, frost withdraws farther up the slopes, retreating like an army defeated by its own endurance. What remains is the clarity that follows chaos, the clean silence of survival acknowledging itself.
When strength returns, Jack rakes the stove's ashes into a shallow pan and carries them outside. The snow's surface gleams untouched, blinding under noon sun. He scatters the gray dust into wind, watching particles swirl upward before dissolving. Patterns form briefly, twisting like script. It looks almost like writing, a primitive prayer composed by chance. The mountain accepts the offering without echo. The gesture feels necessary, a final salute to the forces that chose mercy instead of annihilation. Each ember that drifts away becomes testimony. That warmth can outlast the storm. That memory survives in residue. Behind him, the cabin door stands open, spilling a wedge of golden light across the threshold. The trail of ash fades into glare, and for the first time, the whiteness feels forgiving rather than hungry. Snow recedes in scalloped drifts, revealing dark soil and broken branches beneath. Jack moves slowly along the slope, tracing the faint depression where Kodiak's tracks once lay. Meltwater pools inside each hollow, mirrors reflecting the returning sky. The path winds toward the ridge, where ice clings stubbornly in shadow. Each step leaves print beside print, man beside bear, time overlapping upon itself. The air smells of wet bark and renewal. Far below, the valley breathes clouds of mist that rise like incense. No roar breaks the quiet, yet the sense of presence lingers, vast and unseen. The trail ends at the clearing of the vigil, the old rock now half bare, moss vivid green against melting snow. Here, he feels completion rather than absence. The watcher's post remains empty but eternal, waiting for no one and everyone at once.
Back inside, the recovering man wakes fully. His gaze, once clouded, clears to sharp blue beneath age's film. Recognition flickers across features carved by decades of endurance. The silence between them fills with unspoken acknowledgement, the understanding shared by those who have served storms of different kinds. Gratitude moves like current through the air, unvoiced yet palpable. Jack senses that words would desecrate the moment. Silence carries more precision than language. Outside, light filters through snow-melt haze, scattering over their faces like memory made visible. The old soldier rests again, peace settling across him as gently as falling ash. Within that calm, Jack realizes the mountain has returned its charge. Both guardians, man and bear, have completed their watch. By afternoon, the cabin stands half sunken in thawed mud, roof glistening with runoff. Jack prepares the interior for departure from isolation. Supplies are consolidated, tools cleaned, surfaces wiped of soot. The rituals of leaving mirror the rituals of survival, methodical, reverent. He opens the window shutters wide. Warm air floods in, carrying scents of cedar and distance. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a low roll of thunder sounds, not threatening, but ceremonial. It feels like farewell spoken in nature's tongue.
Light pools over the cot, over folded blankets, over the doorway where snow once sealed them in. The storm has transformed from enemy to witness. Every droplet sliding from the roof glitters briefly, each a reminder that endurance, when shared, becomes grace rather than punishment.
Evening descends clear and pale. The snowfield that once buried the cabin lies scored with melting channels. Near the tree line, a series of impressions lead away. Massive, deliberate, fresh. Jack follows them to the ridge. The footprints continue toward higher ground until they fade into rock where sunlight lingers longest. Each hollow holds pooled water reflecting sky, as if the mountain preserves the path in memory. He stands where fur once shimmered against twilight, feeling absence settle not as loss, but as continuation. Wind lifts across the clearing, carrying the scent of damp fur, resin, and thaw. The world exhales through him. When he turns back toward the cabin, his own prints overlay the bears, fusing into a single indistinguishable pattern, human and wild, moving in unified direction toward horizon. Night returns gentle, stripped of menace. Stars emerge one by one, reflected in black pools scattered across melting snow. The forest hums softly, the dripping of thaw, the creak of branches, the far rhythm of water under ice. In that symphony, a deeper silence rises, layered and resonant. It is the sound left when purpose is fulfilled. Jack sits outside the cabin, fire dying to embers, eyes lifted to constellations framed by mountain ridges. Somewhere beyond hearing, the Great Bear continues its endless patrol through the wilderness of memory. The man who once fled the world sits motionless, breathing in rhythm with the night. The storm's scars gleam faintly under starlight, not as wounds, but as inscriptions. The silence that remains is no longer the absence of sound. It is the mountain's hymn of remembrance, echoing forever through those who endured.
Spring edges upward through frozen ground. Streams carve silver seams across the slopes, singing where silence once ruled. The cabin stands upright again, wood darkened, roof dripping like a clock marking the new season. Jack walks beyond its shadow, boots sinking into softened soil. Around him, the mountain exhales warmth. Moss brightens, sap rises, air fills with the faint scent of wet bark. Each sound is a reminder that stillness can awaken, that life never truly retreats, only waits. He stops beside the ridge, the old watchpost now half buried in sprouting grass. The rock that once held Kodiak's vigil gleams with meltwater, smooth and sunlit. For the first time, Jack touches it without hesitation. The stone is cold but alive, humming faintly with the weight of years. Beneath his palm, he feels continuity, the slow pulse of a world that keeps remembering. The path down slope has changed. Melted streams cut channels through the forest floor, forcing new roots between trunks and fallen limbs. Jack moves carefully, tracing the lines of water as if following veins through the mountain's skin. Birds return in fractured choruses, their calls unfamiliar after so much silence. Each flutter, each echo, feels like a greeting from an earlier life. At the valley's edge, he pauses beside a ring of thawed mud where a massive paw print hardens under sunlight. The impression already glistens with clear water, mirror to the sky. He lowers a hand, pressing fingers inside the shape, feeling its size dwarf his own. The gesture completes something wordless, an exchange between witness and guardian. When he rises, his hand carries the scent of earth and fur. The wind lifts it away, scattering memory into air warmed by renewal.
Evenings settle mild and amber. Smoke curls from the cabin chimney in thin, steady lines. The old soldier rests outside, strength returning with each clear day. Jack tends the fire between them, watching sparks drift upward into dusk. No words pass. Communication moves through rhythm, crackle, breath, heartbeat. The mountain listens, its silence, altered but intact, now companion rather than adversary. Light shifts on the horizon, painting snow patches in soft rose. The two survivors share warmth not out of necessity, but reverence, acknowledging the unseen teacher that carried them through the storm. The fire burns evenly, neither fierce nor fading, mirroring the balance both men have found. Behind the steady flame, the ridge glows faintly, hinting at the path where fur once shimmered against night. The wilderness feels closer, patient, content to watch without intruding. Work resumes in quiet patterns. Tools hang sharpened, wood stacked, ground turned for planting. Jack learns from the older man's careful gestures, the pacing of labor shaped by decades of seasons. The routines feel ancient, predating grief, rooted in something wider than memory. Every task carries echo, the swing of an axe recalling the beat of wings, the scrape of shovel matching distant river rhythm. The storm's ruin becomes foundation. Scar transforms into structure. Through repetition, understanding replaces pain. The mountain rewards motion with small gifts, sprigs of green, the scent of thawed soil, the cry of hawks tracing circles above renewed light. Jack senses that he and the wilderness now speak a shared dialect, one built from endurance instead of defiance. What he once called isolation reveals itself as belonging disguised in silence.
Days grow long. The forest turns from monochrome to tapestry. Lichen blooming chartreuse across stone, wildflowers piercing meltwater banks with violet flame. Light deepens into gold at dusk, filling the valley like slow-spilled honey. Jack walks without purpose beyond habit, letting color replace vigilance. Each hue feels foreign, almost excessive, as if the world compensates for months of white. The thawed air carries scents layered with memory, pine resin, ash, fir, and faint traces of smoke long cooled. None of it feels heavy. Beauty, once overwhelming, now lands gently. He realizes that peace is not absence of struggle, but coexistence with what remains. Every shade of green carries whisper of snow beneath it. Every warmth holds echo of cold. The bear's lesson endures through pigment and air, the understanding that nothing truly vanishes, it only changes color. A path forms naturally through use, a soft corridor of trampled grass connecting two shelters. Jack follows it each morning with a tin cup of steaming coffee, steam mingling with mist rising from thawed ground. The old soldier waits on his porch, wrapped in wool, eyes steady toward the horizon. Between them stretches conversation unspoken, a dialogue of shared survival. The walk becomes ritual, step, breath, exhale, repeat. On both sides of the path, early shoots push through soil, bending under dew before straightening toward sun. The trail itself grows smooth, an artery pulsing quietly between solitude and community. The mountain accepts the pattern, echoing it with animal treks and rivulets that carve their own return routes. Where once there was distance measured by fear, there is now continuity shaped by footsteps and trust.
Seasons fold together, rain replaces snow, and the forest exhales in layers of sound. Dripping leaves, distant thunder, the steady pulse of life unbroken. Jack feels himself dissolving into this continuum, no longer observer, but participant. His mind, once armored, now opens to rhythm instead of silence. Work, rest, weather, breath, all merge into seamless motion.
Memory loses its edges. The war becomes story. The storm becomes chapter. The bear becomes element. In this rhythm, he discovers peace without forgetting. The mountain's heartbeat matches his own, deep and slow. Existence narrows to essentials: wood smoke, water, the occasional cry of an unseen creature. The world, stripped of noise, speaks clearly at last. Every echo of the past filters into harmony, so complete that even ghosts, once feared, simply join the choir of living things continuing their watch. At season's height, the earth near the ridge dries enough to reveal hardened prints preserved in mud, massive arcs surrounded by smaller indentations where meltwater once pooled. Jack kneels beside them, tracing the outlines with deliberate care. The shapes remain perfect, unmoved by rain or wind. He presses his palm into the nearest impression. Skin meets earth, memory meets permanence. The contact bridges all seasons, all silences. Heat rises faintly from soil warmed by afternoon sun. He withdraws his hand, leaving its outline overlaid upon the paws, human and animal fused. Light catches the moisture, making both glisten as one form before fading. The print becomes monument, not of death, but of persistence, the proof that guardianship continues beyond flesh. Wind passes through pines, carrying the faint resonance of a roar softened into eternal breath.
Evening descends with ceremonial grace. Clouds bruise violet along the western peaks, and the air hums with insects newly born. Jack sits on the ridgestone, the same once occupied by Kodiak. From here, the valley expands outward like an open book. Every ridge, every scar of avalanche, every trickle of silver water tells a line of the same story, endurance transformed into beauty. He listens, eyes closed, as the wind funnels upward through canyons, carrying scents of cedar and wet granite. Beneath that current pulses a deeper vibration, the living heart of the mountain itself. It beats through stone, soil, and every creature that dares remain. The rhythm reaches his chest, matching pulse for pulse until separation dissolves. The guardian's post no longer belongs to one being. It belongs to all who remember. Night settles clear, stars sharp enough to ring. The air holds warmth instead of threat. Jack lingers outside the cabin, watching constellations wheel above ridges polished by moonlight. The world around him feels awake yet perfectly still, a balance earned through endurance. In the distance, an echo drifts, low, resonant, indistinct, the memory of a roar that never truly ends. He does not strain to hear it, he lets it pass through him, part wind, part heartbeat, part history. The silence that follows is absolute yet full, the final cadence of a long hymn. The mountain sleeps but remembers. Its watchers, man, beast, memory, remain within its pulse. The storm is gone, the witness endures. In that endless stillness, life continues its vigil, and peace takes its truest form. The quiet certainty that nothing once loved is ever lost.